People always talk about the weight of fatherhood like it's a burden. But for me, it was the only thing that ever gave my life meaning. Her name was Molina. She was born on a rainy Thursday in March. So small she fit in the crook of my arm, but with a cry loud enough to make the nurses laugh. Her mother left us when Molina was just 7 months old. She walked out with nothing but a duffel bag and a lie about needing space. I waited for weeks, stupidly thinking she'd come back, that maybe postpartum had gotten the better of her. But she never did. She was just gone. And I was left holding a baby I barely knew how to care for. But I figured it out. One bottle, one lullaby, one broken night of sleep at a time. I didn't come from money. I sure as hell didn't have a safety net. I worked security at a warehouse by night and delivered food during the day. Most nights, I slept in 20-minute stretches with a baby monitor on my chest and formula stains on every shirt I owned. There were moments I thought I was drowning. When she was sick. When I couldn't afford daycare and had to beg my neighbor to watch her. When my car broke down and I walked 3 miles through the snow with her bundled in a stroller just to get to work. But I never let her see me fall apart. I kept that hidden, locked away in the quiet of the night when she was finally asleep. Those were the tears no one ever talks about. I did it all without applause, without backup, and without ever hearing the words, "Thank you." But I didn't need them. At least that's what I told myself. By the time Molina turned 16, she was everything I had hoped for. Sharp, ambitious, sweet when she wanted to be, and quick to correct anyone who underestimated her. We had our arguments like any parent and teen, but we had a rhythm, an understanding that didn't always need words. She knew how hard I worked, even if she didn't always say it, and I took a quiet pride in watching her succeed. Honor roll, part-time jobs, college scholarships. I told myself this is what it was all for. Every unpaid bill, every sleepless night, every meal I skipped so she wouldn't have to. I was building a future for her. I just didn't know she'd end up rewriting that future without me in it. When she came to me about the wedding, her face lit up like it did when she was little, asking for an extra scoop of ice cream. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing a picture of a fancy vineyard estate. "It's perfect, Dad," she said. "It's everything I ever dreamed of." Her fiancé, Marcus, seemed like a decent guy. Respectful, had a good job. I wanted to give this to her. I wanted her to start her new life with beauty and celebration, not the quiet struggle I'd known. So when she said the venue was expensive and his family couldn't cover it all, she looked at me with that old glimmer in her eye. The one that always said, "I trust you, Daddy." And I nodded, told her I'd take care of it. No hesitation. I dipped into the savings I'd been hoarding for years. Money I'd secretly planned to use to finally replace my rusted car. Maybe take a trip for once in my life. I didn't blink. I wired the deposit that same week. The house felt different in those days. Full of lists, fabric swatches, and laughter from her phone calls with the bridal party. I mostly stayed out of the way, cooking dinner when she was too busy to eat, listening when she vented about seating charts and gluten allergies. I kept thinking about how far we'd come, from curling up on a couch in a one-bedroom apartment watching cartoons to planning a wedding fit for royalty. I didn't say much, but inside I was proud, not just of her, but of me, of us. We had made it through hell and back together. At least I believed we had. Looking back, I never saw it coming. That quiet shift, that rewriting of our past. Maybe there were signs. The way she never kept photos of us on display. How she brushed past stories from her childhood. How she never invited me to formally meet his family. But I chalked it up to nerves, to her being busy. I trusted her. Maybe that was my mistake. Not realizing that someone could love you deeply and still erase you from the parts that matter most. The real gut punch came the night before the wedding. I wasn't supposed to be at the bridal shower. I just stopped by to drop off extra wine and a cake she'd forgotten. I walked in through the back, not wanting to interrupt. That's when I heard her voice float down the hall. She was laughing, glowing, standing with Marcus's family. I paused when I heard her say it. "Oh, my mom raised me all on her own. I've never really had a dad. Just one of those things, you know?" The room chuckled lightly. Someone made a sympathetic sound. And she continued. But she did such a good job. I never felt like I missed out. I didn't move. Couldn't. It was like the floor dropped out from under me. My hands tightened around the cake box until the cardboard creaked. A heat rose in my chest. Rage, grief, betrayal, all tangled into a storm I couldn't speak through. I set the cake down on the counter without a word. I walked out. No one noticed. No one called after me. And in that moment, something broke. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice, light, cheerful, proud, telling them I was never there. Those weren't just omissions. They were erasers, offered like facts. She'd rewritten her history in real time, and I was watching the man I'd been for 25 years vanish in a single breath. I thought about all the moments she'd chosen to forget. My clumsy fingers braiding her hair before school, taking night shifts and sleeping in my car during college tours so I could afford the trip, staying up for every flu, every heartbreak, every tear, clapping louder than anyone at her graduation. Tears in my eyes, thinking we made it. Not just she, but we, a team, a bond forged, in fire, or so I thought. The morning of the wedding, I said nothing. I went through the motions like a ghost, ironing my shirt, packing my shoes. She came downstairs just after 9, barefoot and glowing. "Dad," she said, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't ripped my heart out and served it cold to strangers. "Can you make sure the photographer gets there on time?" I nodded. I looked her right in the eyes and nodded. It felt like standing on frozen ice, knowing it was already cracked, but pretending it wasn't. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't notice anything different. Or maybe she did and she just didn't care. I knew then that if I confronted her, it wouldn't change anything. She'd make an excuse. She might even cry and make me feel like the villain. And I'd fold. I'd always folded for her. But something in me, some shard of pride, refused to let that happen this time. I went out onto the porch and sat for a long time. I scrolled to the email confirmation from the venue. $14,750. Paid in full. A number that represented years of saving, scraping, sacrificing. All for a daughter who had just publicly erased me like a typo. The decision came quietly, but it felt final. At 11:03 a.m., 3 hours before the ceremony, I called the venue. The woman was polite, confused. I told her to cancel the reservation. She asked about a refund. "Partial," she said. I told her I didn't care. "Cancel it." Then I turned off my phone. I packed a single bag, 2 changes of clothes, my toothbrush, and 1 photo of Molina and me from her 5th birthday. She had cake on her cheeks and was laughing like nothing could ever hurt her. I took that picture not to remember her, but to remind myself that I was there, that I existed, that I mattered even if she decided I didn't. The last thing I did was write a note, just a few words on the back of an old receipt. I placed it on the kitchen counter where she'd find it. "Let your mom help you, since you grew up with her." That was all I had left. I didn't wait. I didn't look back. I walked out of that house and kept walking. I didn't know what I expected to feel, but it wasn't peace. What settled into my bones as I drove away was something closer to freedom than I'd ever known. The quiet, resolved kind that comes from finally choosing yourself after decades of shrinking. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't crying. I was just done. I drove with no destination. My phone stayed off. I didn't want to hear the messages, the panic, the apologies. I knew what she'd say. My dad left me on my wedding day. Not the 25 years before that. Just the ending. Just the part where I said, "No more." By 2 o'clock, I was 2 towns over, sitting at a truck stop diner, staring at a cold cup of coffee. The server, a woman with kind eyes and tired hands, asked if I wanted a refill. I said no. For the first time in years, no one was calling my name. No one was asking for rides, for money, for help. I was no one's backup plan. Just a man in a booth, anonymous and free. I thought about the note. How few words it took to summarize a lifetime. "Let your mom help you." felt cruel, but it was honest. Maybe the first time I'd ever been truly direct with her. I had given her everything, made her my world, and she buried me like a footnote. If she had just told the truth even once, I could have lived with that. But to erase me? To fabricate a life where I never existed? That wasn't just hurtful. It was strategic. And that was the part that burned. The wedding was supposed to start at 4. I imagined the chaos. Guests arriving to locked gates. Marcus pacing. Molina checking her phone, wondering why I hadn't shown. Part of me wanted to be there, to finally be seen. To make sure she couldn't look away from the damage. But I stayed gone. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. I checked into a cheap motel that night. I lay on the bed, listening to trucks rumble by on the highway. My mind played everything. On a loop. Her words. The note. The years. I thought about the time she broke her arm in 4th grade and wouldn't let anyone but me hold her hand during the x-ray. The nights she'd crawl into my bed after a nightmare and whisper, "Don't let anything get me, Daddy." How do you get from there to this? When did I stop being the hero and start being the ghost? The next morning, I turned my phone back on. The notifications flooded in. Calls from her. Texts from Marcus. Even one from her mother, who hadn't spoken to me in over a decade. There was one voicemail from Molina. I listened with the phone on speaker, my hands trembling. "Dad, what the hell? Where are you? The venue said you canceled. Everyone's here. You just left without saying anything. I don't understand. Please call me. Please." There was no apology in her voice. Just panic. Confusion. A hint of anger. Not once did she say, "I'm sorry." Not once did she say, "I know what I did." That told me everything I needed to know. I deleted the message and blocked the number. She was never going to understand. Not fully. And I wasn't going to keep sacrificing my peace so she could continue pretending I never mattered. There's a grief that comes with choosing yourself. A coldness, a silence. But it's a clean grief. And I was ready for it. 5 years went by. Some days I didn't think about her at all. Other days, I'd hear a voice say "Dad" in a crowd and turn, my heart in my throat, before realizing it wasn't her. Some nights, in the loneliness, I'd wonder if I'd gone too far, if disappearing had made me cruel. But those moments passed. The truth always came back. She had erased me long before I left. I moved towns over, found work at a community center, rented a small apartment above a bakery. The smell of rising bread became my new alarm clock. It was a quiet life. No more panic texts. No more emergencies. For the first time in decades, my life was my own. No one called me Dad anymore. And that was both a relief and a wound I learned to carry. Then I heard about her. Marcus's cousin, Dwayne, recognized me at a hardware store. He looked uncomfortable. He told me the wedding never happened. Once the venue canceled and I vanished, everything spiraled. Marcus's family was furious. They fought. He walked out. The wedding was off. Her mother refused to let her back in. She lost her job. Word got around. She spiraled. Ended up sleeping on a friend's couch. Then moved out of state. No one heard much after that. He looked at me, expecting shock, sorrow, guilt. I just nodded, told him thanks for the update, paid for my things and walked away. I didn't feel joy. This wasn't about revenge. It was about finally knowing that consequences have weight, that the truth doesn't stay buried forever. I didn't ruin her life. She made her choices, and life held her accountable in ways I never could. But I felt something. Not happiness, not sadness. Just closure. Like watching a storm pass in the distance, knowing it's not coming for you. I went home that night and sat on my porch. The sky was soft and purple. The street was quiet. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. I didn't owe her a second chance. My silence had been my line in the sand, and I was still standing on the right side of it. A week later, a letter came. No return address, but I knew her handwriting. I let it sit for 3 days before I opened it. It was short. She said she was sorry for how things turned out. She wished I'd come to the wedding, that maybe things would have been different. She said she was trying to get her life together and hoped I was doing well. That was it. No ownership. No real apology. Just a soft reach in my direction. I didn't write back. Some people might think that makes me bitter. That family is too important to throw away. But those people didn't hear her voice that day. They didn't watch her carve me out of her story. They didn't spend years building something only to be told they were never part of it. It was late October when she showed up. The air was sharp. I was walking home from work when I saw her leaning against a silver sedan by the curb, arms crossed, like we'd spoken yesterday. She looked older, softer around the edges, with faint shadows under her eyes. But she still had that same stubbornness in her jaw. "Hi, Dad," she said, like it was normal. I didn't answer, just stood there. She pushed off the car. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice low. "I asked Dwayne. He told me where you were." I let her talk. She looked around, hoping for a warmer welcome. When she didn't get one, she sighed. "Look, I know you're angry." I held up a hand. "No," I said, my voice calm. "You don't know. You assume. If you came for forgiveness, say that. Don't start with guessing games." That threw her off. Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't planned for directness. "I came to explain," she said finally. "I know what I said was wrong." Panicked. I was trying to make things simple for Marcus's family. They were judgmental. I thought if I made my life sound clean, less complicated. "You made it sound like I didn't exist." I cut in. "You didn't simplify. You erased. And don't pretend it was a one-time thing. You'd said it before. You lived it." She swallowed hard. "I was ashamed," she admitted. And for a second, I saw a flicker of the girl I used to know. Not of you, of me, of how we grew up, of not having what other girls had. I thought if I could rewrite it a little, things would be easier. I nodded slowly. "But you rewrote it without asking if I was okay being deleted." She didn't respond. The wind picked up. "I lost everything after you left," she said. "Marcus, the job, my apartment. Mom kicked me out. I've been waitressing in Arizona. I'm doing better now. But I never stopped thinking about you." I wanted to believe her. God knows I did. "So why now?" I asked. "Why come back after all this time?" She shrugged, her eyes glassy. "Because I thought maybe we could start over. That if I explained, you'd understand." I exhaled slowly. There it was. The soft landing she still believed she was owed. "Understand, Molina? I understood the moment I heard you say I never existed. That's the clearest thing you ever gave me. I've built a life since then. A life without waiting, without begging, without watching you rewrite history while expecting me to pay the bill." Her face fell. Not dramatically, but in that quiet, crumbling way people do when they realize the damage is permanent. She stepped back, wiped her cheek. "I don't know what I expected." "Neither do I," I replied. "But it wasn't this." She nodded, turned, and walked back to her car. She didn't slam the door. She just drove away slowly, like someone leaving a place for the last time. And I stood there, hearing the wind rattle the leaves around me. And that was that. The morning after she left, I woke up before the sun. There was no weight on my chest. No storm behind my eyes. Just quiet. Just breath. I made coffee and sat by the window as the world woke up. For the first time in a lifetime, I wasn't bracing for a call. I wasn't waiting for someone to remember I mattered. I was simply existing. And that was enough. I thought about her standing there. Not quite the woman I raised, but not a stranger either. There was truth in her words. There was pain and shame. But there was also that quiet expectation that because I had always shown up, I would do it again. But the thing about being erased is that you don't just reappear when it's convenient. You stay gone. Not out of revenge. Out of self-respect. I didn't hear from her again. And I was glad for it. Silence was its own kind of boundary. I had spent too many years waiting for scraps of acknowledgement. Pretending that love without respect was enough. It wasn't. Not anymore. Now, on quiet days, I sit on the porch and watch the neighborhood kids ride the
Irbikes.
I sip my coffee. I listen to the birds. I think about the man I used to be, the one who bent over backwards for love, who gave until he forgot there was anything left of himself to protect. I don't hate that man. I just wish he'd known sooner that love isn't proven by sacrifice alone, that real love includes being seen. And when you're not seen, you have every right to walk away. I still keep that old photo of us on her 5th birthday. Her cheeks covered in frosting, my arm around her tiny shoulders, both of us laughing like nothing could ever go wrong. I don't keep it because I'm holding on. I keep it because it's real. Because whatever came after that moment was truth. That man existed. That little girl loved him. And for that one sliver in time, it was enough. People say family is everything. But I've learned that sometimes everything you need begins when you stop letting the word family excuse the hurt. When you start defining your worth not by who you raised, but by who you are. And I am a man who gave everything, who walked away not out of hate, but out of love for himself. And that, more than anything, is what I deserve.